Guys, you just saw the AP top 10. Alabama's the clear number one right now. I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence by saying who else should be number one, but if there is separation between Alabama and, in my judgment, Ohio State and the rest, what comes after Alabama and perhaps Ohio State, Kirk?
Well, you know, I think you may have people who differ. Maybe people don't feel Ohio State would be a 2. I happen to agree with you because of the win on a neutral site against TCU and then going into the whiteout, which is one of the toughest environments at night, and finding a way to knock off Penn State. I think after 5 or 6 weeks, I think for me, you could put them at 2. After that, I'm waiting on Georgia for this week. I kind of feel that Georgia, if Georgia goes to LSU and looks good doing it, they could very easily move ahead of Ohio State. So I think on paper, Georgia would be that next team. You could bring up Clemson and then Notre Dame. But, Joey, I would give Georgia the nod right now, sitting there at 3. And a lot of that is on potential because they haven't really had that marquee game yet to be able to solidify themselves up into the top 2 or 3.
I don't think I see the gap starting from number 2 to number 3. I would say the gap starts at number 1. Alabama, like you said, Reese, we're on agreement. They're number 1. They would win against any other team on any place, any neutral field in any country. I would take them minus 14 points. Now, I wouldn't say the same thing.
Doesn't even matter where.
Exactly. But if I'm looking and you were to say, okay, let's take the other teams and play on a neutral site, I wouldn't feel that comfortable saying that Ohio State versus Clemson or Ohio State versus Georgia or Georgia-Clemson on a neutral site. I think I would have to really think about who would win that game. So I don't see the gap being at 1 and 2 and then the rest of them. I actually still have Clemson at number 2. I like what they've done. In a game, in a tight game, I know it's Syracuse, but in a tight game, they drop down to their number 3 quarterback midway through. This guy's pulling off a green vest and have to run onto the field. You can imagine how many reps he didn't get because they had Trevor Lawrence. They had Kelly Bryant that week before he decided to leave. And so, Jesse, when I look at it, I don't see that gap. I still like what Clemson's done. I think they're talented defensively. I still have Clemson at number 2, then Ohio State, and then Georgia.
I like Alabama, the United States, Canada, or Pakistan. They are dominant right now. I think it's the best team that Nick Saban has had. I really do. I think it's really all because of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Guys, is there a more efficient quarterback that's ever played in college football history? This guy's been ridiculous. I got Ohio State at 2, guys, and I think Dwayne Haskins has been phenomenal, obviously having the best year statistically a quarterback at Ohio State has ever had. I got questions still about Ohio State's defense, though. I think they're giving up a lot of explosive plays, but I agree with what Kirk said earlier. I think that win at Penn State, to me, this year has been the most impressive win. Clemson at 3, and I give them a lot of credit for winning at A&M earlier this year, but also the win against Syracuse when Trevor Lawrence got injured. I think that showed a lot. Obviously, their defense is dominant. And finally, guys, I've got Notre Dame at 4, kind of on the inside now. I think I've seen enough from quarterback Ian Book over the last 3 weeks. To me, of any of these teams sort of in the top 6, I think Notre Dame's the best combination of, quote, eye test and resume, having beaten Michigan, Stanford with Bryce Love, and then very impressive win this past week on the road at Virginia Tech. That's been impressive to me. So I've kind of got Georgia on the outside looking in for what we've all just said. Really haven't been tested yet. South Carolina, probably the toughest game they've played so far. And then, David, I've got Penn State at number 6. I give them a lot of credit for how they played that Ohio State game, being up by 12 points in the fourth quarter against a very good team. I think you could make the argument Trace McSorley should be in the Heisman discussion.
Here's the awesome thing. I think the awesome thing is all of us are up here and we're all talking about this and we all have different opinions. And it's not going to be unlike the room. I mean, because somebody's going to place certain importance on certain things. And when I look at it, the eye test, like a lot of you guys, is going to be number 1, and Alabama passes that with flying colors. To me, the rest is all the same. I mean, Ohio State, I like what they've done. From a resume standpoint, they look the same to me as Clemson. I think that's a great game if they play Clemson. I think it's a great game if they play Georgia, Ohio State, all those teams. So to me, I start going with resume. And when I look at resume, Ohio State's got the next best resume. Notre Dame's got the next best resume for me. And then Clemson going to A&M to me is next. And then I had Georgia 5 and Penn State 6. I'm not putting on Penn State just like you guys because we saw that Penn State-Ohio State game they very easily could have won. But, I mean, I honestly think that 2 through 6 range is, you know, what have you done right now from a standpoint of resume, because I think there's a lot of the same to me.